My name is John H., and I'm an alcoholic. I'm also a drug addict and a compulsive gambler. In this Code Blue Big Book Study in Action seminar, we're going to go through the recovery section of the Big Book line by line, and we're going to do the action that our book tells us we must do to recover from the seemingly hopeless condition of mind and body. This is based on the Canadian method used by the Golden Slippers, but I also borrow a lot of information from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes, as I feel their interpretation carries so much depth and weight. Sometimes I use their material verbatim, so don't get angry at me. Sometimes they can say things a lot better than me. This action and study is designed so that you can follow along in a 4th edition Big Book. Have your pen and highlighter ready. I don't claim to be any kind of Big Book guru or top 10 spiritualist. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a group of my heroes, some recovered alcoholics, took me through the book 5 years ago and saved my life. There's also some paperwork that you can download. Hopefully I'll get that online as well. Some from Joe and Charlie and some from the Golden Slippers. Please forgive any mistakes, errors, or misquotes you may detect. I'm sure there are many, for once again, I'm just a simple drunk trying to help other folks as I was helped myself. Thanks for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now deceased, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the Big Book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have in effect been left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. Tonight we are on steps 10 and 11. So I've got some of the paperwork up front here, and this daily inventory is very similar to the one that I passed out for step 6 and 7. This one has check marks in it, though, so I'll talk about that a little bit later when we get on to step 11. In the book, the promises that are read at all the meetings, they come in the midst of or when we're finished with step 9, right? That's where we're going to get these major promises. And the people that taught me, they've warned me, right? They said, we've seen it time and time again where people go through this program and they get done with step 9 and their life is going so great, right, that they just can't believe it, right? They've got maybe a new job, they've got extra money, they've got a new TV, they got new clothes, they got new carpeting, and then they're thinking, well, to pay for all this stuff, maybe I better work a little bit more overtime. And they've seen people cut back on their meetings, right? And eventually, our book tells us that if we do that, we're asking for trouble, right? So they're going to tell us what to do. Steps 10 and 11 are called the maintenance step. But I think that's a misnomer, because we're going to discover today that if we do steps 10 and 11 the way our book tells us to do them, they're going to be growth steps. I mean, we're going to keep growing and discovering new things about ourselves, about other people, and about our relationship with God. So let's see here. I don't know about you guys, but I write stuff down. I've got about 12 or 15 notebooks full of stuff at home. So today I've got 2 notebooks, and my notes are going to be all over the place, so bear with me. Every time I do one of these code blues, it's different, because I'm in a different position in my life, and I've just learned something new or something different. So I always like to change things up a little bit. So we're on page 84, and if you guys remember, we ended with the promises. And, it just said, are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. And, funny enough, I came in and out of these rooms of AA for years, and but I never worked the steps, and I would always get really angry when they read these promises, because I would say, I'm going to all these meetings and nothing's happening in my life. My life is still as miserable as ever, right? And I didn't discover until about 3.5, maybe 4 years ago, that the reason was because I was not doing the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. All I was doing was trying to stay sober with the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I stopped drinking, it didn't matter how many meetings I went to. When I wasn't working these steps, my life always got worse, whether I was drinking or not. So, all right, step 10, middle of the page. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests, highlight, we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. Okay, highlight that line. And right next to that, we're going to write remain teachable. Remain teachable. That's one thing that we work these steps. We have a new attitude, and it's okay for us to learn new things and to admit that we're wrong. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. We have entered the world of the Spirit. Okay, so we've woken up spiritually. We're awake to spiritual things. That's not saying that we're spiritual gurus or anything else, but we're looking at the life. We're looking at the world around us and ourselves and God differently from how we did in the past. We've woken up spiritually. Our next function is to grow. Underline the word grow, right? Not maintain. It doesn't say maintain. It says to grow in understanding and effectiveness. This is not an overnight matter. Highlight, it should continue for our lifetime. We're actually going to highlight to the end of the paragraph. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. So the paragraph that we just highlighted, right next to it, we're going to write step 10 instructions. These are step 10 instructions. You can put a 1 in front of continue. This is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. Put a 1 in front of that continue, the capital C. That's the first one. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Okay, so above selfishness, dishonesty, and resentment and fear, write 4. Right? Because we did that when we did step 4. We looked at our selfishness, our dishonesty, our anger, and our fear. Okay, when. Circle the word when. And right next to it, write not if. That's telling us that we're human. And it's giving us permission to be human and to make mistakes. Right? So it says when these crop up. Okay, put a 2 in front of we. We ask God at once to remove them. That's the second instruction. And we're going to write above that 6 and 7. We did that in step 6 and 7. So we've already seen step 4, and now we've seen step 6 and 7. Put a 3 in front of we. We discuss them with someone immediately. That's the third instruction. Now above that, write step 5. Step 5. Discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Okay, I'm gonna say that's still instruction 3 with the M there, but above that, let's write steps 8 and 9. Steps 8 and 9. And then put a 4 in front of then. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Okay, so step 12. That's step 12 right there. So they're telling us that step 10 is reworking during the day on a daily basis steps 4 through 9. And then they're throwing in a little bit of step 12 on top of that. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So after that you can write code blue. I was told that's where they got the name for this, is code blue. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. So we're going to underline that, and next to it we're going to write miracle. That's kind of a miracle. I don't know about you guys. When I was on my own, not only was I fighting the obsession to drink by myself a day at a time when I wasn't working these steps and I didn't have God in my life, but I was also fighting with myself, and I was also fighting with everybody in my life. So that's a pretty good miracle. That's a promise. We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity, circle the word sanity, will have returned. So on page 84, we get our sanity back. Remember step 2, right? They're giving us our sanity back on page 84 after we've worked these steps. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. You can also write 10-step promises next to these, right? 10-step promises. So they're miracles and they're promises. There are promises throughout this whole book, not only the ones that they read at meetings. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. Highlight avoiding temptation. When I wasn't working these steps, I had to stay away from every place where there was liquor. I couldn't even watch movies. When I saw cold beer on TV, my mouth would start to water. Neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Okay, so again, those are more promises. More promises. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. Okay, so we're going to highlight, double underline. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Okay, so we're going to write somewhere in there. I got mine on the inside. How do I know if I'm not spiritually fit? How do I know if I'm not spiritually fit? Right? And that's a question that all of us can kind of answer to ourselves. How do I know if I'm not spiritually fit? I can tell you guys, for me, when I am selfish, when I catch myself being selfish, when I catch myself being dishonest, when I'm full of resentment and anger, and when I'm full of fear, I've got that my chest is really tight, and I'm anxious, and I'm worrying, and I'm stressed out, and I'm thinking about myself, and I'm not treating other people with patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, and I'm not connected with God. I mean, that's the way I used to live my life. And today, when I get angry, I'm not used to being angry, and when I get angry, I can feel it, and I know something's wrong with me, right? When I get really full of fear about something, and my chest just tightens up, I'm not used to feeling that way anymore, and I know there's something wrong with me, right? So when that happens, when I'm done reading step 10, I'm going to show you how I run the same columns that we did when we did the 4th step. And I have practiced this so often. I've gone through the Code Blue so many times that I can now do all this in my head when I feel these things, right? And even if somebody does something really awful to me and I don't have any, I didn't get it rolling or I didn't do anything to cause it, when I feel really angry, there is something wrong with me, right? No matter what the people do to me, when I feel that way, that there's something wrong with me and I've got to look at myself. I'm not saying that it never happens. It happens to me a lot because I'm a hothead. Thank God I've got this book that tells me what to do. So that is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So they're saying that the instructions for step 10 are going to sure help us to keep in fit spiritual condition, but they're also going to help us grow, right? They're going to help us grow. We're going to highlight the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. Highlight the next 5 lines, and we're going to be writing a few things. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Okay? So circle the word laurels and draw a little line where you can write some things. So laurels. Things I've done. Good things I've done. Accomplishments I've achieved. Past tense. Good things I've done. Accomplishments I've achieved, past tense. That's why, you see those guys in AA, the ones that are really working, they're looking for new sponsees all the time because they know they have to keep helping people and they got to keep going through these steps themselves. Good things I've done, accomplishments I've achieved, past tense. So that's the word laurels. Right? And the book is telling us right now that it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, things that we've done in the past, even if they're really good things, right? The next line, we are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. Okay, circle subtle foe and draw a little arrow somewhere where you can write some more words. We're going to describe what a subtle foe is. That means sly, clever, devious, difficult to detect. Right? That's subtle in this context. Sly, clever, devious, difficult to detect. Okay? And foe. Foe is personal enemy. Personal enemy. So they're telling us that alcohol is sly, it's clever, it's devious, it's difficult to detect, and it wants to kill us. It's our personal enemy, right? It's a subtle foe. It's going to seep into our lives and we don't even know it. Sly, clever, devious, difficult to detect, foe, personal enemy. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve. Next to daily reprieve, we're going to write postponement of death sentence. Postponement of death sentence. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Right? So daily reprieve, postponement of death sentence. A little picture in my head. It's like the governor calls every day and says, give John another day, right? He's doing the right things. So every day is a day when we must, circle must, carry the vision of God's will into all, underline all, of our activities. All of our activities. Let's underline the next little statement, and next to it we're going to write 10-step prayer. How can I best serve Thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. That's a 10th-step prayer. 10th-step prayer. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Okay, so doggone it, underline that word willpower. So on page 84, they gave us our sanity back, and on page 85, they gave us our willpower back. Remember how willpower didn't do anything for us when it came to combating willpower, but now we're getting our willpower back as long as we're using it in the right way. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of will. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction. Underline direction. And somewhere in there, right? Not suggestions, right? Not suggestions. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction. Not suggestions. From Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, underline it again, follow directions, not suggestions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. So remember, they said that the idea of God is deep down within every man, woman, and child. And you can call it the little voice, you can call it the soul, you can call it the conscience, but they're telling us that that's within us. And when we work these steps, we're going to be able to draw on that power. And we're going to be able to do all kinds of things we're not supposed to be able to do. Right? All kinds of things we're not supposed to be able to do. When I first started coming to meetings, when I got at a detox, I was when going around the circle, when it was coming up on me, my mind would fry out and I could barely say pass, right? Now I'm out and I'm sponsoring other people. I'm doing this Code Blue. I'll go out and I'll pick up somebody who's drunk and try to get them to detox. I'll do all kinds of things that I'm really not supposed to be able to do. Right? Because I've got that sixth sense that Bill's talking about. Sometimes. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further. Highlight that last sentence. But we must go further, and that means more action. Right? This is a program of directions and actions. So let me see if I can find the notes that I want to read. I'm going to, a couple of weeks ago, I did the 10th step at a meeting, so I'm just going to read some of the notes that I had. And one of the things I started out with, because I really like the 10th tradition. And somebody taught me, if I don't work the steps and live by the principles of this program, maybe I'll drink and maybe I'll die, right? But if the fellowship does not live by the traditions and follow the traditions, perhaps AA will fail. If that happens, we all might drink and we all might die. So, that makes me wonder, what's more important, the steps or the traditions? I think they're both so important. Can somebody read Tradition 12 up there? I can't see quite that far. Tradition 10, I'm sorry. Tradition 10.
Anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions, and we're reminded. What one we?
10.
I'm just kidding. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy.
Okay, so basically, I'm just going to talk really briefly. Back around the 1840s, there was a group called the Washingtonians, right? And the Washingtonians was kind of like AA. Now, it was one alcoholic helping another alcoholic, and they were doing things similar to what we do in AA. And remember, back in the 1840s, there's no phones, there's no internet, there's no nothing. These guys reached 200,000 members in the mid-1840s. And that was one alcohol helping another alcoholic. That is only the second time in 7,000 years of recorded history where there was a large-scale successful rehabilitation of chronic alcoholics, right? Now, the Washingtonians, when they got They got really successful. They said, you know what, man? We're so successful, I bet we can do some other things. They had only been working on helping alcoholics, but then they got the bright idea that they would try to stop the selling of booze, right? Let's get into that. Let's try to stop the selling of booze. They got involved in religion, right? And they had a big election going on, much like the one we have coming up. And they said this election is so doggone important that we had better get involved because the very future of our country depends on it. So they got involved in politics. Well, guess what? The Washingtonians, 1 year after they started to doing that, they were completely dissolved. They did not exist anymore. And most of them died drunk. Right? So we got to remember that our primary purpose is to carry the message and help other alcoholics, right? That's all we do. We don't do anything else. You know, and it's also important to remember, you know, we've got those steps on the wall. So as a fellowship, we took the steps out of the book, we put them on the wall and on those little cards, and I like that. But we've got to remember that all the instructions on how to work them are in the book, right? The other thing about step 10, somehow we got the idea that we do step 10 at night, right? Step 10 is something that we do during the day as we're walking around, right? Let's see. I've got, if I go to work, right, and I get into an argument with somebody at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, and I mean, it's like we're yelling, we're going back and forth, and I get really angry, you know, and I feel that I've got resentment in me, right? I've got an inventory sheet in my head. And when that happens, right, I'm screwed up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I've got to deal with it right away. Because if I wait until I get home at night to deal with that anger or that fear and that frustration, I'm going to be treating other people badly all day, and I'm probably going to be getting in a lot more arguments with people as the day goes along. So when I feel that resentment or fear or selfishness or dishonesty, my book tells me to deal with it right away. So how do we deal with it, right? Well, we go over to the corner and we say something like this. Okay, John, who are you angry at? Right? Or what are you afraid of? Okay? Who are you angry at? What did they do to you, John? Okay, John, what part of self is affected? Is it your self-esteem? Is it your security instinct? What part of you is affected? Okay, John, what did you do, if anything, to get this argument or this resentment or fear going? And then I ask myself, which character defect set this fear or anger into motion? Because, guys, I cannot get upset unless one or more of my character defects is activated. Right? Remember our sheet? I think I got one here. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened, or inconsiderate. I cannot get upset unless one of those has been activated. And I can usually spot it right away. Right? And I say, okay, God, you know I don't want to feel this way. Please take it away. Right? Then I try to discuss it with somebody right away, hopefully my sponsor, but if not, you know, pull somebody at work and maybe talk to them. We make amends quickly if we've harmed anybody, and then we look for someone to help, right? Or we can think about, you know, well, what am I going to talk about with my sponsee when I meet him tonight, or something of that nature. And the reason we do this, right, I have wasted all the time that I want to waste in my life in resentment, fear, anger, worry, anxiousness, depression. I've wasted all of the time I want to waste. And I do not have to do that anymore. I like feeling good, right? And if we continue to do this, right, we're going to learn, not only do we get rid of that stuff right away, right, we're going to learn more and more about ourselves, about others, and about our relationship with God. This is an absolute new dimension of living. Now, if I don't do this, right, if I got my chest is really tight and I'm angry, if I stay angry, fearful, resentful, dishonest, selfish, depressed, I must want to be that way, right? And I can't blame anybody else. I can't blame my boss, even if he's yelling at me. I can't blame my customers. Maybe they treated me bad. I can't blame mommy and daddy. I can only blame myself. And sometimes, you know, sometimes I'm guilty. And I like to be angry and I like to stomp around because it gives me a smug feeling of superiority. But usually I'm good enough where I can catch myself and I say, "Oh, John, there you go again. You're gonna stop this, right?" In the past 81 years, this book that we're going through and the instructions in it and the simple recipes, they have changed more alcoholic lives than all of the other therapies in the history of mankind. And the funny thing that somebody pointed this out to me, Bill W., the guy that wrote it, even though the others helped, he did not know enough to write this book. He started writing this book when he was 3 years sober. Right? He did not know enough. He had no training in sociology, no training in psychology or religion, didn't know much about human nature, nothing. He should not have been able to write this book. So, what does that tell you? That tells you that I believe he was an instrument and he was receiving help when he wrote this doggone thing. So I'm going to talk about, real quick, a couple of Mondays ago, how I got really, really afraid at work and what I did, right? This, I think, was about 3 Mondays ago, and I talked about this briefly maybe three weeks ago here in Code Blue, but I had one of my good customers, and they have a lot of different jobs, and they buy tile from me, and one of the jobs that she bought, I made a mistake and sent the wrong tile out to that job, right? So she had that over my head. She called me on Monday at about 11:30 and she started screaming at me saying, "Where the hell is my tile delivery?" And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said, "BS, I emailed you Friday. The tile guys are out there at the job. They're waiting for it. You're costing me money. Where the hell is it?" I had the stuff at the shop, but it was like 3,000 pounds, and she wanted me to get it 60 miles away, in 10 minutes, and it wasn't going to happen. And I started the fear started to build up in me, and she kept emailing me, and she called 15 minutes later, "Have you got it out yet?" So basically what I did is I took care of it. I called the delivery service. I got everything set up, spent a lot of extra money to get it out there as quick as I could. And then she started yelling at me about the wrong tile at the other job, right, that I had screwed up on. And she said, "You're killing me." And I knew that the other tile, this was Monday, wasn't getting installed till Wednesday. But I said, "You know what? I'm gonna get that tile out to that job now." Well, it was 70 miles away. Right, so I got the one delivery going out to that job, and I got in my truck and I started driving the other direction with the other stuff. So here I am in my chest. I've got fear and anger, right? So this is the same sheet that we used when we did the 4-step, right? So let's say, column 1. Who am I afraid of? Well, I was afraid of this woman, right? She's a good customer. Why do I have the fear? Well, she's yelling at me and blaming me for something, right? So what part of myself is affected? Well, my self-esteem was affected, right? Because apparently I made a big mistake, so I looked bad in her eyes, and I also looked bad in the other salesman's eyes, right? So it affected my self-esteem negatively. It also affected my personal relationships, because I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and I was short with my warehouse guys, I was short with some customers, and I was short with other salespeople. So it's affecting other personal relationships. Okay, so and I'm thinking of all this as I'm on my way driving in my car. It also affected my security instinct, right? My material instinct, right? My wanting of safety and secure and money. It was affecting that because she could cancel these deals and I would lose money. But it was also affecting my security for the future, because I got to keep her happy because she buys a lot of tile from me, right? It affected my emotional instinct as well. So all of these things and my ambitions for the future. So it really affected a lot of what part of myself was affected, a lot of it. Now we get to the 4th column. This is the important part. What is the exact nature of my wrongs, my faults, my mistakes, my defects or shortcomings? Okay, was I dishonest? No, I wasn't dishonest. I didn't try to do anything. I made an honest mistake, and I didn't get her email. So no, I wasn't dishonest. Was I selfish? Well, about the money, yeah, I was worried about John getting his commission. So you bet I was selfish, because John wants that commission. Not only does he want that commission, but he wants all the commissions in the future. Was I self-seeking and frightened? Well, I certainly was fearful. Was I self-seeking? You bet I was. John comes first. What I want to happen is I want her to place the orders, be no problems whatsoever. The orders go out, I collect the money, and I don't want to hear about any problems. So yeah, I'm self-seeking. Was I inconsiderate? Oh, heck yeah. Not only is she dealing with me, but she's dealing with 5 other contractor subs. She's dealing with 5 other suppliers in addition to me, and she probably was going nuts. And even if she did forget to email me the Friday before, she was probably having one hell of a day, and I certainly did not consider that. Right? I only thought about John. So, I'm driving out there to deliver the one job, and I'm thinking of all of these things. And once I saw that, it's like, right? Now I understand what's going on here. And then what I did, funny enough, we were working on fear on the 4th step the very next day. So I kind of planned out some new stuff I was going to say for Code Blue. So in effect, I was thinking of helping other people. Right? Now, the other thing, of course, that popped in my head was that you could just tell her, because she's like this a lot, you could tell her that you'd please deal with another salesman, and then you could just give up the money and you wouldn't have to worry about that, right? But of course, since I'm selfish, I didn't do that. But I mean, when I did all of this and I ran these columns in my head, guys, for 2 hours, I was just, I was like this, and but as soon as I realized that, this all went away, and I mean, it was all gone. I dropped the tile off, right? I didn't even go back to work. I went home and I had a great day. So when we run these columns, now if I wouldn't have done this, I would have been feeling anxiety all day, and then anybody that I ran into for the rest of the day was going to get the short end of the stick, because I would have been in a bad place spiritually, right? So whenever this happens to me now, and because I'm not used to it. I'm not used to that tight feeling in my chest. So when I follow the instructions in the book, I can get rid of that real quick. And when I do that, I'm a much better employee. I'm a much better, help my customers much better, and I'm just a better human all around. So these little instructions, man, that they give us in the book, it really works good. I'm going to do one more quick one. I was at a noon meeting. This was like a year ago at a different place, right? I was at a noon meeting. And I went first. There was about 6. No, there were about 8 of us in a small group. And I started out and I talked about how I went to a lot of meetings and I didn't work these steps, and how I continually relapsed. And I talked about how once I was taken through the book and how important it was to work all of these steps, that I was able to recover from this disease. And I just kind of went on and on for about 5 minutes about the importance of the steps, right? The very next person to speak, right? The very next guy, he goes, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a 35-year shiny silver coin. And he goes, I got 35 years and I didn't work any of these steps. The only thing that I ever had to do was admit step 1 and then go to a lot of meetings. And that's all you got to do. Right? So I immediately, right, I'm in this little small group, and immediately I got pissed. I got so pissed, but I didn't say anything. I'm smart enough to keep my mouth shut, right? So I'm not hearing anybody else, right? This person goes, and there were a couple of chronic relapsers in the group, right? I didn't hear a word. It got done to me, and the whole thing in my head, I'm planning, I'm going to take the son of a bitch and put him up, but then I glanced up and I saw their tradition, right? That the only requirement is the desire to stay sober. And I'm thinking, you know what, man? This guy, if that worked for him, who am I to say anything, right? Now, that's not saying that I wasn't pissed, right? So I didn't say anything. I think a couple of the people, I grabbed one guy who was relapsing and I said, look, man, I'm telling you, if you want me to take you through the book, I'll help sponsor you, but the relief for me came when I worked the steps. So I talked to that guy. I didn't say a word to anybody. I didn't know anybody in men.
I left that meeting, and it was my day off, and I got home, and I was getting angrier and angrier, right? So it's 2 hours later, and and of course there was a guy that happened to be staying with me, Eric, who was here, poor Eric. You know, I went up to him and I said, Eric, you're not going to believe this son of a bitch, right? He's killing people, right? So I said, he's killing people, he's doing this and that, you know, and I told him what a horrible guy this was and how he's killing people, and then I said, God, take it away, right? Well, an hour later, I'm even more angry. I'm even angrier, right? So I go, okay, what's going on here? Well, I had to physically get out this sheet, and I looked at it. Who am I mad at? Well, I'm mad at that fella. Why am I mad? Oh, I'm mad because he directly contradicted what I said. Wow. Which part of myself is affected? My self-esteem is affected. What others think of me, you know, or what I think of myself, that's affected. Personal relationships, could have been. I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut, so I didn't do anything. Basically, I kind of went through all the rest of these. The big one there was my self-esteem. And I said, you know what? I started telling Eric that I gave him the I am holier than thou speech about this guy. Really, I was angry because he contradicted Johnny, right? So I got mad because my self-esteem took a hit, my social instinct, right? So then what's the exact nature of my wrongs? Selfish? You know, what I want matters, dishonest, maybe not, but self-seeking and frightened, yeah, because I had fear, because when he said I'm going to be the devil's advocate, I knew it was coming, 35-year coin. So self-seeking, what John wants matters more than what other people want, and fear, and then I was inconsiderate of what this fella had done to recover. So this I'm holier than thou bullshit was nothing. It was all about my self-esteem is why I got angry, not that he's killing other alcoholics, right? And I was self-seeking, I was frightened, and I was inconsiderate. Once I understood that, then I was able to laugh about it. I had to go back to Eric and I say, you know, the real reason I'm pissed off is because of this. And then I asked God to take it away, and then I called the sponsee, and poof, it was gone. Right, once I figured out. But here I was being the holier than thou guy, and that wasn't it at all. So those were just two examples of how I really and boom, I was able to get rid of that stuff right away. So these steps, man, they really work. And I'm going to say, for any of you people in this group, I don't care if you're newly sober or not, right? The whole idea of Code Blue is that you guys will go out and sponsor people. And anybody here who's done a fourth and a fifth step and has done the 7-step prayer with us right here on the knees and has made even 1 or 2 amends, the way I was taught, you are now ready to raise your hand when they say who is willing to be a sponsor. Right? And my sponsor made me do this, right? I'd only been working the steps wherever we are right now. I made a couple of easy amends, and he said, you raise your hand and start sponsoring other people. So the way I was taught, you guys, if you've done these steps up to this point, you're ready to go. And you know, I was thinking about it. When I raised my hand and when that first guy asked me to sponsor him, I became full of fear. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy actually wants help. And I called up my sponsor and I yelled at him and I said, you take him, I don't know what to do. I'm going to kill him, you know. And he laughed at me and he said, well, number one, it's not up to you. If he's willing to do the work, you know what to do. And I said, I do not know what to do. He said, you take him through the book, you have him highlight what we highlighted, you have him write down what we wrote, and you have him the first big thing, you're going to do step 3 together, you're going to have him do his 4th step just like we did it, you're going to hear his 5th step, you're going to hit your knees and do 6 and 7 with him, and then you're going to help him with his amends. And I'm like, oh wow, really? And I had been really struggling before this. I was sober but not working these steps, and I wanted to drink like a crazy man, even though I was going to a meeting every night. And I had tried to sponsor people, and I didn't have anything to offer these people. All I could do was pick them up and take them to meetings. And the only thing I could tell them was I would say, well, go to more meetings, put the plug in the jug, don't drink, call me before you drink, join the Sober Softball League, get to the meeting early and make coffee, go to more meetings. That's all I had because I hadn't worked these steps. So me trying to sponsor people, I was doing a disservice to them, and I was doing a disservice to myself. Now, once we go through and we work these steps, that's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's one alcoholic working the steps with another, right? That's what it is. So, all right, so let's see here. One other thing that I really liked about step 10, a quote by Thomas Jefferson: "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Right? So we really got to keep an eye on ourselves, right? We really do. And again, it comes down to the idea of business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. And for us, it tells us resentment is going to kill us. And for us to go broke is simply to go back to drinking. 3 areas that we've got to watch when we're taking our daily inventory are our thoughts and our motives, our words, what we say to other people, and our actions. Right? And it's always better if we can deal with our thoughts and our feelings before we open our mouth. So if we're lucky, we're still going to feel a lot of angst, but maybe we can stop ourselves before we hurt somebody. And I know that all of these things, when I feel them, they come from self-centered fear. I'm worried about myself. And, how is my relationship with God, right? Let's see here. I think that's... Oh, yeah, and the other thing it's kind of like akin to when we let human pride and fear, right? Human pride and fear are our enemies. They're going to keep us from dealing with our faults, right? And the book tells us that when we are hurt and we are sore, when we're upset, we're in the wrong also. And it tells us again and again, resentments are going to kill us. The things that you get by doing step 10, you get a great ability to dissolve misunderstandings. And the coolest thing is when you can dissolve misunderstandings before they get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, right? So you can dissolve them quickly. We get freedom from being found out, which is our fear, right? Because we take care of things quickly. We're going to experience freedom from guilt, and we are going to experience an ability to help others. And, one way, it's like most guys are like this. I'm like this, right? I can be driving along, and I'm totally lost. I don't need to stop and ask for directions, boom, boom, boom. So pretty soon you've wasted a half a day because you didn't just pull over and ask directions, right? Well, this is this. We're wasting another day in anger, worry, and fear because we're not following these doggone instructions. So, my sponsor said too, he taught me, he said, we can wait until these things build up, they build up, they build up, right? We become full of anger and fear. We start treating others badly. When we do that, remember how we become cut off from the sunlight of the Spirit? We're almost at the point where we're going to drink, right? Then we got to go back and we got to do 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 formally again, right? We got to write it all up. Or we can do this a little bit at a time during the day, and as we're going to see at night in step 11, right? And by doing that, we can keep ourselves in a fit spiritual condition, connected to God and to others, and at peace with ourselves. So again, this either we can be in disharmony with ourselves, with others, and with God, or we can be in harmony. And steps 10 and 11 absolutely keep us in harmony. One thing I forgot to do, right? That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. One definition of fit spiritual condition is being connected to God. Being connected to God. Now, I want to ask everybody in the room right now, right? Think about the 2 worst things you have ever done in your life. And I'm not going to ask anybody to say anything, but just think about the 1 or 2 worst things you've ever done in your life. And then ask yourself, could you have done these things if you were connected with the sunlight of the Spirit? Right? If you had a good relationship with God, could you have done those things? I'm talking about the God that created the forests, the stars, the hippopotamus, right? If you're walking in the sunlight of the Spirit, could you have done those things? I sure don't think I could have. When I think about the 2 worst things I've ever done, if I was connected to God, there's no way that I could have done them, or perhaps even thought about them. So we want to keep in fit spiritual condition, because we're going to be better off, and everybody around us is going to be much, much better off. One other thing I want to read. This is a nice little guide here, and then we'll get on to step 11. Problems other than alcohol. This you should get this and read the whole thing. But there's one phrase in here, problems other than alcohol, written by Bill Wilson. And one thing in here it says, because some meetings I go to, and everybody wants to talk about their problems rather than the solution. I mean, we can help people with their problems after the meeting, but we really want to talk about the solution. But it says, sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps, is the sole purpose of an AA group. Groups have repeatedly tried other activities, and they have always failed. So I just thought that was kind of a cool little phrase there. Let's see. The 9 questions to help you with step 10. And again, guys, I don't want to bury you with paperwork, but these are just things you can look at. Step 10, remember, we do step 10 as soon as we're feeling that angst in our chest. That's right when we do it. But if you read these when you get home from work every day, it's going to help you the next day. How may I have harmed myself or someone else? Which of my character defects caused me to do those harmful things? How was I selfish, dishonest, resentful, or fearful? Did I ask my higher power to remove my selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear as soon as I was aware of them? What is left for my higher power to remove? Did I admit my mistakes promptly and make amends? What do I still need to take care of? How often during the day was I feeling gratitude? Right? Gratitude is a great weapon against these things. And how often was I feeling self-pity? What good did I do today? How was I loving and compassionate? Who did I help today and how? So these are just little things that we can, when you get home at work, you can kind of look over them. But when we do these things, we get to the point where we can run these little inventories in our head and take care of this stuff right away. So let's go back to the book. Page 85. My notes really... Okay. Step 11. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. Obviously highlight that. Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. Highlight, it works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. So highlight that little sentence, and then next to it, just write the word practice. Right? I mean, it's like anything. We get better when we practice it. I came into here and I had no idea how to either pray or meditate, right? I mean, the only prayers I knew were, God, get me out of this, and I promise I'll never do it again. That's the only one that I knew. And I didn't know how to meditate. I had the racing head, right? I couldn't, there's no way I could even sit still. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, right? That's telling us that Bill doesn't know much about it either. Yet, we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Okay, so we're going to draw just a little line from the word make out to the end of the page and write PM. PM. Okay? So they're going to tell us things to do at night, things to do in the morning, and things to do throughout the whole day, right? So, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. There it is again. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Okay, write 4 above that. Do we owe an apology? Write 5 above that. Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Let's write 5 above that. Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others? Right? Of what we could pack into the stream of life. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. So I got that whole paragraph highlighted, and the next one too, simply because they're the PM and the AM prayers. But let's underline morbid reflection. Let's underline that. And then next to it, let's write, beat self up about past. Beat self up about past. So it's warning us against that. And that whole paragraph was 11th step instructions, by the way. But morbid reflection, right? They're really telling us we can't do that. So in other words, let's say that I did something at work and I made a mistake, and I get home and I go, my God, John, you've been sober for 5 years now. How could you have done that? You are an idiot. I thought that you are the worst John, you haven't learned anything, right? So what we're doing is I'm a loser, right? We cannot do that. That's morbid reflection. And it's saying not only is it bad for us, right, but also for that would diminish our usefulness to others. So it's warning us not to do that, right? Remember, it told us earlier that when these things crop up, it tells us what to do. We're humans. By God, we're going to make mistakes, right? In the past, when we were using in the midst of our addiction, then the guilt, shame, and remorse would eat us alive, and we would continually tell ourselves what a lousy person we are. And I don't know about you guys, but the only way I could shut that off was by drinking. But we're not to do that anymore, right? And we don't have to do it because when we make a mistake, we know how we can now fix it rather quickly, right? And then we move on. Once we fix it, we no longer need to carry that in our bag. We no longer, because that's going to make us less useful people. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. So that's 6 and 7. So we're going to put a little 1. What are we going to do here? Put a 1 by we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. That's the first prayer, right? We're going to get some prayers here in step 11. So those are the evening ones. So we can draw a little line under should be taken to the end of the page, and now we can write morning, right? So this is AM when you get up. On awakening, right? Now, one of the guys that I listened to, he said, John, you know what that means? That means right when you get up. And he says, if you're like me, of course, you're gonna want to get up and you're gonna go to the bathroom right away. You're gonna hobble down the hall there. But on awakening, he told me, he said, the first thing I want you to do when you open your eyes is invite God into your life. Right? So I can at least do that. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. Okay? We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, put a 2 in front of we. That's the second prayer there. We ask God to direct our thinking, especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Okay? Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So the one sheet that I handed out, we're gonna look at that when we're done reading. And I literally look at those morning things every single morning. I read through them on that little sheet. It's so easy to do. And every night, I wish I could say I do the PM every night. I don't. But when I do it, it's so easy to do because it's on that sheet again. When thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Put a 3 in front of here, or right there. Here, we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers will come after we have tried this for a while. So I guess I got all that highlighted too. So you know what we do? If we get a problem that we really don't have the answer to, I mean, I used to just think about it and think about it, and I've got to solve it now. I've got to take care of this now. I don't know what to do, and I drive myself nuts. So now, we don't know. We've got indecision. So, we say a prayer, and then we go about our business and start doing other things, and we forget about it. And, it's amazing how somebody at a meeting who talks later that day might have the answer you're looking for. Or you might after a couple hours say, golly, I think I'll call Bill. I'll see if Bill. But we're going to get something, and we're going to see if we can't get that answer to come to us rather than to force it, right? So the key is we relax and take it easy, but we keep doing other stuff. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we've tried this for a while. And then I've got a note at the bottom of the page there. If this is for people who are in early sobriety, right? Have sponsee call after PM prayers, right? I mean, some people that are really struggling now, at this point we're getting direction. The higher power for somebody who's in early sobriety to start out with might be that doggone sponsor. So that sponsor is going to be giving a lot of direction and instructions to these people. And if they're really struggling and they cannot even get a day sober, sometimes you got to have that person call you in the morning after the prayers and at night after the prayers and maybe even during the day. Whatever we've got to do to help this person get through that day sober. So have sponsee call after PM prayers. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Remember, when we practice these things, we get better at it, just like anything. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Right? God told me to do that, right? We got to be careful. We don't really know what's... Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. Remember, it's progress, not perfection. So first thing in the morning, again, my sponsor, he said, thank God for being alive. Thank God for the day. And say, how can I be of service to you and my fellows? Right? He told me to lead by example. And again, it's best if we can be free of fear and anger. And you don't need to write that, but it's spiritual. It's spirituality and emotional sobriety versus being dry. I don't know if any of you guys, you try to sober up without going to meetings, and you know what dry is. You're still angry and you're still fearful and you don't treat people very well, and you're dry, right? That's no way to live. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. Put a 4 in front of the we there. That we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. Okay? The fourth prayer, and kind of keep going, it's the whole thing is the prayer here. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. You got to underline that. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. So in the margin there, you can write foxhole prayers. Foxhole prayers. God, get me this job. God, please get me that girl over there. Have her say yes to a date. God, get me this. God, be my errand boy. That's not how it works, right? Remember, in step 3, God is our director, right? But at the same time, we can do all kinds of things because God's with us all the way from that 3rd step. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Underline, be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. All right, so let's put a 5 in front of the as. We've got another prayer here. And so we're going to go ahead and highlight the next 3 lines. And at the bottom of the page, let's write opposite of fear is faith. Right? Faith/courage. Opposite of fear is faith/courage. And again, guys, one of my favorite prayers is in the 4th step under fear. God, please remove my fear and show me what you would have me be. Right? That's in the book, in the 4th step. And that doesn't say, God, show me what to do. It's, God, show me what you would have me be. Right? As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. So you're at work and things are going crazy. You're freaking out. If you're anything like me, sometimes we tend to catastrophize things. We go straight from 0 to 180. The world is ending, right? So we got to slow down, right? Pause, and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, put the 6 in front of thy will be done. Thy will be done. Highlight the next to the end of the paragraph there. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. Wow, that's a fantastic promise. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. So that whole thing, man, step 11 promises. Those are fantastic. I mean, if you remember how it is when we're out there using and we're running and gunning and we're trying to control other people and how other people think about us, and we're just doing all kinds of crazy things and we're getting tired and nothing's working and we're beating our heads against the wall. We don't have to do that anymore, man. We got a lot more energy. Here is the next one is the smallest complete paragraph in the book. It works, it really does. It works, it really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. Obviously, we're going to highlight again. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. He keeps saying faith without works is dead, right? So we can talk about all these spiritual maxims, we can talk about all these things all we want, but if we don't do the actions, we're not going to have the great success. And when I go back and I think about Bill going and talking to Dr. Bob in Akron. For 2 weeks they talked about spirituality and they talked about all these steps, right? And Bob got that sobriety for 2 weeks and things were going really good. But then Bob went on that tremendous relapse, right? And, when he got back, not only did Dr. Bob make his amends, right, which was part of the problem, but they also refocused. They immediately set to work on trying to help other alcoholics, and they ran to the hospital. So Bob was out there sponsoring within 10 days. And we're going to talk about that next. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12, right? And again, when I think about this, Bill did not know how to pray. He was like me, so thank God he made so simple instructions that even I can follow them. And if I practice these things, I'm gonna get better at it and better at it. I just want to look at these 2 things now. I gave you this daily inventory. You had one very similar to this for the 6th and 7th step. But, guys, it's and I never did this, right? But I was told to do this right. Make yourself a bunch of copies of these, right? And we start to practice these prayers and everything. And then at night we kind of go through and we just, so you got a bunch of copies, and you just kind of check, today was I more selfish and self-seeking, or did I expect more interest in others? Was I more dishonest today, or would I give myself the check for honesty? Right? So at the end of the night, we can just kind of go through these things, and we can make the check marks, right? And I can guarantee you guys that if you practice these, steps 10 and 11, which are really steps 4 through 9 and step 12, if you practice those on a daily basis, you're going to start to make more check marks on the right-hand side, which is personality characteristics of God's will. But it's kind of cool. You can date it, and you can check, and you can see how you're doing. Now, this sheet right here is invaluable to me, because when I get up in the morning, what I do a couple of things. I say the 3rd step, 7th step, and the 11th step prayer. But I also look at this right here, because it's so easy. So I go to the morning, right? And on awakening, before I leave the house, I get on my knees, and I say, God, I ask you to direct my thinking. I ask especially that my thinking be divorced, and I read that, and then it says, I think about the 24 hours ahead, consider your plans for the day. So I run through my day, because I'm in kind of a routine, what's going to happen. And then keep in mind that when you're faced with indecision, I ask you for inspiration, intuitive thought, or decision. And I go through all of these. God, I pray I be shown all through the day what my next step is to be. And the big one that I always do, my Creator, I ask that you show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. God, what can I do for the man who is still sick? And again, I work with Carol in here. We both work at the tile shop, so it's kind of funny that she'll laugh at this one, but there's 3 people that I insert in this next one. God, I ask that everything I want for myself, there's 3 people I work with that I put in that prayer, and I say it every single morning, and I ask for their health, prosperity, and happiness. And you know what, man? I don't get angry at them. They still do shenanigans and stuff, and they still sometimes, and particularly my boss, he's one of them, obviously, he can still freak out on me, but when I do this, I don't get angry at him like I used to, right? And it works. And then, I read these other ones too. And then at night, right, guys? This is so simple to do at night. Just before you go to bed, you look at it, and this one is with God. Was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid today? Do I owe an apology? Did I miss something on a step 10? Have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with another at once? If I have, I better call my sponsor. Were you kind and loving towards all? Usually that's a pretty tall order for me. I get a little better each day, but I certainly, towards all, usually not. What could I have done better? Were you thinking of yourself most of the time? So if we do 10 during the day, and we just kind of look at this at night, and if necessary, we call our sponsor and talk about it. And then, oh my gosh, you know what? That I was really short with that guy today. The next time I see him, I'm going to say sorry that I did that, right? And we be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, right? So again, we got to stop beating ourselves up. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes. That's okay. We're on a better path right now. And God knows that. He sees that. He loves us. He wants what's best for us. And He doesn't want us to fail. And He doesn't want us to think that we're lousy people. And then after we think about our day, God, please forgive me. And tell me what corrective measures should be taken. And all the times, there's a lot of different kinds of meditation. And if you guys are good at meditating, there's all kinds of things you can do. For me, about the most I can do is when I ask for God's direction is just try to clear my head and be silent, for a few moments, right? And see if anything comes. That's about the best that I can do. Let's see here. So, step 11, right? Signs that we're on the right path, right? These are things that if we're doing these are things that we're going to get, right? And not all the time, but now and then we're going to have a deep sense of gratitude, right? A deep sense of gratitude. And gratitude, a lot of times, if you're not, try to think of something every morning and every night that you're grateful for, right? But a deep sense of gratitude. We're going to also have a feeling that we belong in the world. that we belong in the world, we're going to experience growth of our self-esteem, right? Golly, we can look ourselves in the eye again, right? And we're going to have a feeling that we have rights and that we are worthy. We're worthy of other people's care and the love from God, right? We're worthy. I heard somebody today, hey, you got $3 more an hour, right? We are worthwhile. We're gonna start to get benefits from this. God does not want us to fail. And one of the reasons that we do not pray for selfish ends, right? Pythagoras, he said, do not pray for yourself because you do not know what will help you. Right? And remember, God does want us to stay sober. He does want us to help others. And God does speak through other people, particularly our sponsor. And we are going to do inventory. We should do inventory for the rest of our lives, even if it's simple. Some people actually write. They'll write for 15 or 20 minutes. And it's been recommended to me that I should journal about each day. And I'll admit that I started it, but I stopped. And that's something that I got to kick myself in the ass and start doing again. Just writing a little journal about each day for maybe even 5 minutes. So again, guys, we do these things. We're going to be in harmony with ourselves, with other people of the world around us, and with God. So that is it for today. I think that's it. So let's end with the 7-step prayer. 7-step prayer on page 76. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I now pray that you remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. Peace.